some of the worst possible weeds of all time in Victoria for soil erosion control, so that one agency of CFNL is controlling weeds and the other's introducing them. Is absolutely straight on what you can bring into the country.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Well, conservation forests and lands really, I think the general feeling around the traps is that they're in a real bloody mess at the moment because they just seem to be contradicting themselves right, left and centre. The same department has just released a fauna and flora guarantee and is giving permits to APM to bait 1080 for a wide spectrum of native animals. The same department that goes out and supposedly the protector of our forests and the establisher and runner of our national parks, as you say, is in their nursery growing introduced weeds. Is there any excuse ever for using introduced plants in replanting, Jeff, or have we always got a native plant and it's just ignorance that keeps us from using them?
Depends entirely upon the situation. You know, if you're trying to stabilise soil in an agricultural situation, there's nothing wrong with using ryegrass or whatever. But if you're dealing with, say, sand dunes or native vegetation, national parks even, they still use exotic plants to stabilise. And one of the things that makes it so terrible is that they almost always use fertiliser, and that just ups the nutrients and increases the weed problem. So that they plant something and it grows well, it stabilises soil, such as ryegrass or clover or something, and then it changes the site for another suite of weeds. So you get succession on that site, and then the weeds permanently exclude the native plants which might otherwise colonise the site, and then they start to move into the bush.
Right, and there was an article in last Tuesday's Age about mimosa grass up in Kakadu National Park. They've got rid of it, but it's a big problem in the territory. Are the tropical areas more prone to weed invasion than down south?
I believe so. I believe that all areas are frightfully prone. It's just if you look at any one climatic zone in Australia, you'll find that if you compare, of course, most of the weeds that we have, say in Victoria, come from similar climates. That's a truism, but it's worth considering because it means that somewhere out there in the world there's many thousands of species that have evolved in a similar climate that are capable probably of growing well here. And whether you look at the temperate regions of Australia or the tropics, it's the same case.
Right, and also too, we're sending some wicked weeds overseas because the eucalypts, as I mentioned for India, are also taking over many of the rivers in Spain, and that's a real irony because I think their native plants, I don't think it's willows, willows are native more to Turkey in that area, but their native plants are being routed by our eucalypts for the same reason. No insects to control the eucalypts, they're growing quite differently, they're chemically very aggressive, they change the nature of the soil, and they change the nature of the riverbanks, and the kind of they don't have hollows to near the same extent, and the kind of habitat that they create is totally foreign to that soil. Will Australian plants potentially be a bigger hazard overseas than what weeds are here?
Well, it's the same. The things that are happening here are happening overseas. And if you look at some countries like South Africa and other temperate regions like that, Mediterranean I should say, they are as prone to weed invasion as Australia. But if you look at England or say Northern Europe, it's not as prone because there are climatic fluctuations that kill a lot of the weeds. They might be established for a few seasons, but a hard winter comes along and knocks them all off. That's not the case in Victoria or South Africa. And in South Africa alone, they lose 6,000 hectares of their spectacular heathland, which contains wonderful proteus and so on and so forth, to weed invasions of species from Australia.
Right. Now, on the solution side, I know there were a couple of South African researchers over here in the 60s who stayed at Wilson's Promontory National Park looking for the natural insects that would attack hakea. And they thought that they could introduce a biological control because these insects wouldn't have their predators. So if they put the insects over there that just attack the Australian hakea, they could wipe out the hakea without introducing yet another problem into their environment. Now, they were very successful with a couple of particular, I think it was Hakea sericea, that particular species of hakea. Should there be a lot more money put into biological control of European species in Australia?
They're not only European, you know.
Sorry, weeds.
Well, obviously there should, but there should be various things we should do, and we shouldn't say give one thing more weight than another. We've got to clean up the quarantine laws. We've got very stringent laws about what animals we bring into Australia, almost nothing about the plants we can bring into Australia. We should educate ourselves, and CFNL officers, as you says, in the regions in CFNL, that people know stuff all about the vegetation. So if they're confronted with a weed, they don't know it until it covers 10,000 hectares. There has to be thrust for biological control. And the other thing is a whole range of land management issues which exacerbate weed control or cause them in the first place, like altered hydrology, eutrophication by spreading super from plains and that sort of thing, hydrological stuff-ups on streams and so on and so forth, land reclamation works with weeds, and that whole range of things.
Right. What about the individual, Jeff? What can individual people do? I know some people say, oh, you're botanical fascists because you want us to pull our European weeds out of the garden, and anything that's European is weeds. But what would be a more moderate and general approach, particularly to our listeners who live in country, in the rural areas?
Well, unfortunately, the average person in the street has got almost no information at all available to them. The only thing that I can think of in Victoria is that good little book written by Vivian Freshwater and Co., Weeds of Sherbrooke Forest, Weeds of Roadsides and Forest at Sherbrooke or something like that, which has a beautiful illustration and some text on a range of very serious weeds up there. Now, CFNL should be producing this sort of literature for all around the state so that they can say these plants shouldn't be grown here. Now, I don't know whether laws will work, whether you can say species A, B and C are prohibited for cultivation here or what, but also the nursery trade's got to clean its act up, you know. It's quite all right to grow some plants somewhere, like sycamore trees will never become a weed in Mildura, but they're a hell of a weed in Sherbrooke. So in the first instance, there's got to be an education program, and there's almost nothing presently known about environmental weeds except by a few maniacs like me, you know, that are running around and crying about these things. But CFNL are frightfully ignorant, absolutely appallingly ignorant. Municipal councils, for example, we do consulting work for places like Mornington Shire, and a lot of the environmental issues there concern weeds, but they're almost always addressing the symptoms rather than the problem. So if the Shire, for example, wants to organise a CEP team to clean out Pittosporum from a coastal reserve, it cleans it out. But in 5 years' time, it'll be the same because every house along the coast has got Pittosporums in their garden. So there's clearly a major community education program needed.
Right. Okay, Jeff. Well, look, hopefully now this information's getting out, we can start the move towards that community education program, and I suppose Eclectic Parrot's part of it. And thanks a lot for talking to us. I don't think you're too manic, mate. All right, and we'll see you soon. We'll put you on hold and I'll talk to you off air. And for the listeners, here we have a track from the Warumpi Band. Warumpi Band and Fire. Whoa. Get your blood moving. Okay. You're on Eclectic Parrot, 3RRR, 14 minutes towards the hour 12 o'clock. We're going to try a bit of rapid talkback. And if you're out there and you've got something to say about weeds, perhaps you disagree with us. We like people to disagree because if you disagree with what we're on about, we might be wrong. You might have a better approach. And or you might be wrong. It doesn't matter so much the rights or wrongs, it's a matter of sharing information. Sounds a bit heavy, doesn't it? All right, so you can give us a call on 419-6744 if you want to plant something else, or if you've got some queries about what you're planting, what kinds of things. If I can't ask you a question, certainly we can get back to Jeff and he can. But if you've got any comments on weeds, and also another thing too that people often bring up and that we try to reinforce in the parrot, something that we'd like to say a lot more about that we perhaps can't use as much as we'd like to, and that's vermin, your cats and your dogs. How well do you look after them? Where do they go at night? How many animals do they kill? Coming back from Port Campbell last night, saw half a dozen cats wandering around the road, and a couple of them had collars on. They're obviously people owned those cats, and would legitimately let them run out and murder them. Now, I know we've had Talkback before with people saying, oh, my cat's lovely and it doesn't do anything and all the rest of it, but they don't, and they're not like that, and unless you really look after them. So if you've got a cat, it really pays to make it your last cat. So if you have any disagreements about weeds or cats or anything, give us a call, 419-6744. Okay, got that number? Get out there and get your phone digit operating, and we'll hear from you, because often the listeners have got more information than we've got out here. Perhaps you've heard of a disastrous weed planting scheme or something like that. Excusing me. And while we're waiting for those calls, I can see them light up, so don't panic, keep dashing for them, we haven't lost the topic. But a little bit more of a wrap about these northern trips. What we're trying to do through the Parrot thing, we've got Sue Cheney, who's actually going to be on air tonight organising them. You might notice if you've been on Parrot trips before that we're a little bit slapdash. Well, we've tried to get rid of the slap and dash nature, and booking forms and brochures, and the station's given us a lot of support. The idea of doing these northern trips is we can get you up there a hell of a lot cheaper than a commercial tour operator can. We haven't got the overheads, and we don't aim to make that giant profit. Yeah, sure, we try to cover wages and things like that, because if we can pay someone a wage to do trips like that, that means they can do them again whether we peg off or not. But this particular one is an absolute and utter gem. The Bunker group of islands, which is just off Gladstone and Bundaberg, in between Gladstone and Bundaberg, is spot on and really worth travelling to. So you can call us on 419-2066 if you want to make a book, and George is out there if you want to make an inquiry. We've got a call on line 6, so I'll have a talk to them. Hello, you're on Eclectic Parrot talking about weeds and vermin.
Hi, listen, it's not about weeds and vermin, but a friend of mine got some part-time work down in St Kilda last week, and she was going through the electoral roll, matching up all the phone numbers for it so they could canvass people about this St Kilda development thing, and they're only taking the people that are in favour of it. And I thought you should know about that.
What was it? The St Kilda Council?
They've got a firm going, and they're doing a survey. They're going through the electoral roll and matching up phone numbers with all the people in the electorate there, and they're canvassing them for their opinion on the marine development there.
And how do they know they're pro?
Sorry?
Or so they're ringing them up, finding out whether they're pro or against, and only counting the ones that are for that development.
For it, yeah, and making a list of them so they've got numbers.
Isn't that bloody extraordinary? That's what we call outright corruption, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty shifty, and they're taking part-time people that are desperate for a buck that'll do it. They really don't know about it, because my friend that's doing it, she lives up in Melbourne.
Right, and she doesn't know anything about the development. And so what are they? They're asking her to go out and poll people, and if they don't give the right result, don't enter it in.
Exactly, yeah.
That's extraordinary. Well, look, we'll get on to that. I might see if I can get the Mayor of St Kilda Council and have a bit of talk to him. The whole thing about that marina, are you a St Kilda resident?
I live down in Brighton, but I'm a fisherman out in the bay, and I think it stinks because it fucks up the marine life in that sheltered area there.
Right. Look, you've got to be really careful too with these developments. It does stuff it up, and it's a real hassle as far as the wildlife goes down there, and it's something that should concern everyone in the bay. I was really surprised that the residents have been so slow to fire up. But look, thanks for your comments, and look, if you could give us a ring back after we've come off air, it'd be really appreciated.
In the meantime, I'll try and find out the name of this firm that's doing it for her, that she's working for as well.
Yep, no problem at all. Look, I'd really like that information. Give us a call after we come off air, and I'll be really happy to take that. Okay, thank you. All right, if you have any more comments about St Kilda, well, if you have any more comments about different bits and pieces, you can give us a call on 419-6744, particularly about environmental weeds, cats and dogs. And back into tropical island tours. These islands up there are fascinating. They're formed, the original island, their formation, I suppose, was one of the papers that Charles Darwin wrote on his voyage of discovery on the Beagle, and the formation of these coral atolls, and they develop a fringing reef, and the reef comes up and the wash from the reef builds up this little coral island, and it starts off and it's built on what they call coral sand, which is just basically broken coral, and they pop up on the reef in various places. They have their own very distinct evolution, and obviously being an island, heaps of marine life depends on them because they're predator free, so they make a really, really good place for nesting birds. In the case of the islands we're visiting, it's going to be 4. The maximum number of people allowed on the islands, I think on any one of them, is 30 35, 40, I think, or maybe the biggest one, and the smallest one is 18 people only, which is absolutely fantastic. And you'll have 8 days, I think, just sitting there on this island, cruising around. Brilliant. No stingers, no crocodiles, nothing to attack you whatsoever out there. You got to take your own wood. We'll organise that. Your own water. We organise that too. You just bring out your food and your tent, and absolute paradise, and stacks and stacks and stacks of snorkeling. And also too, you might remember a couple of weeks ago, the humpback whale migration route goes right through there. So a really good chance of spotting humpback whales, better than even's chance of seeing turtles, perhaps even nesting. And these trips are going to be in October and November. We're going to 4 different islands, and you'll be able to pick which island you want for which time, and they're back-to-back trips. A bold effort by us, but if you help us make it successful, then it's something we can keep going. It's a really good thing for RRR to be involved in travel. Since AUS travel folded for younger crew, there's not been very many opportunities, and of course I'll be there working as a naturalist, swatting very hard and liaising with the local naturalists up there to give you all the information about the islands when you're on the trip. And you'll be able to live off the land quite a bit, because you're allowed to eat fish and that are caught by line up there, and that should make up a big percentage of the diet. And the spiconias and things like that, with a few seeds that take a bit of preparation, but I'm quite keen to prepare them and show people, so it should be really good. Okay, well, the talkback's very quiet today. We're not getting very much of a mutter out of that, and but other things are happening, and we'll go back then with a bit of a hand. Give us a call, 419-6744. Pull your finger out. What are you doing out there? Usually the parrot listeners are squawking at me. Why don't you do more talkback? Here we are, I'm doing talkback and you're not talking to me. So give us a call on 419-6744. If you want to talk about weeds, you've got a couple of minutes. And just a couple of other things that came out of the paper that maybe we didn't cover very thoroughly this morning, and is in regard to, let's have a little flick through here. Hi. Yes, no grain of sand, the penguins thing. And as that chap brought up with St Kilda, there's quite a few things. Hello, here are our parrot callers. Let's bring them up. Hello, you're on Eclectic Parrot.
Yes, hello, you got the talk back on about Vermin?
Yep.
Yeah. What's happening?
Oh, well, give us a whistle. Let us know what you know about Vermin. What's happening there? You're on air now.
I want to talk to, we've got this weed in the backyard, couch grass.
Mm-hmm.
And it grows and grows and grows, and we can't get rid of it.
You want to know how to get rid of it? Give it a good burn. That's a really good way to get rid of couch grass. Go out, if you find where the SEC's been doing their environmental destructivity and knocking over trees on power lines and things like that, get a few branches and boughs and lay them over your backyard in the patches you want to burn, and give them a real hot fire. And don't burn down your neighbour's fence or anything, and you'll find that'll get rid of your couch grass for you, and you can put your native stuff in there after that.
Excellent.
Okay? No worries, mate. You're on Eclectic Parrot talking about, oh, hello, we lost you. That's my error there. And so, yes, couch grass, that's a problem for lots of people in suburban areas, and something that comes up quite often. All right, we'll go into another track from the Warumpi Band, and we'll come back and we'll finish off the parrot for this Monday left of the show. We'll just wind down the Warumpi Band, I'm sure they won't mind, and we'll have talked to someone about the advice they got from Conservation Forests and Lands. Hello. You're on air on RRR.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Over the last few weeks, I've been trying to get information on what species to plant in some erosion-prone areas, and local CFNL reps and council, and that have been saying, willows, they'll grow quickest and the rest of it. Otherwise, you can't get any information about particular native species that could control that sort of problem.
Right. Well, look, that seems to be a common problem, and something that we hope to tackle. We're getting together some botanists, and maybe we can bring out lists for each of the regions and get CFNL to pay for it. But what you mentioned there is a big hassle, and we've just got time for a very quick one more call, and we'll get back to you on that. Stay tuned and see if we can give you some information in the future. Okay?
Bye.
Yeah. And we'll ring the next listener up. Hello, you're on Eclectic Parrot.
Hello, Bob.
Yeah.
Andy Van Gimmett from Lara. Listen, I've got a block of land here in Lara, about an acre and a quarter or so, but I've got a lot of boxthorn on it, and I was wondering what's the best way to get rid of that. And I don't like to use poisons, of course.
Dig it and pull it with a tractor. Get a tractor and a chain, and wrap the chain around the back of it. You can do quite a whole lot of plants at once and just rip it straight out.
Yeah, we've had a go at that. It's
pretty horrific.
Yeah, we said it keeps sprouting back. I was just wondering if there's any other sort of method to...
All right. Well, burning it is a good start. Again, use the same thing, eucalypt boughs, but another really important thing is to plant other stuff. You've got to stay on top of it. So going around and sort of cutting out the individual bits of the plants when it does start to come back and staying right on top works out quite well.
Yeah.
So you'll get out of it like that.
All right.
Okay, thanks a lot for your call. All right, we can't take any more calls, so I apologise to people who've called on air. We left it a bit short today. We've got to go off. We've got Room with a View coming up, standing impatiently outside. Sorry, boys. We've stitched another minute off them. Hello. We've even got ourselves interesting little calls on the line. Okay, and so I can hear...
Hello, I'm Libby Beckworth and this is the 12 o'clock news on Victorian Public Radio, heard at this time every day from Monday to Friday. It's prepared and presented by second year students of journalism at RMIT. And now for the news. First the headlines. Severe disruptions to state transport, the Gulf crisis and an increase in Victorian police powers. Emergency talks this weekend have averted a total shutdown of Melbourne's transport system today, but there are still severe disruptions. A Ministry of Transport spokesman says the city's buses are running normally, but there are no trams and trains are only running about every 20 minutes. The strike is a result of maintenance bans imposed by unions in protest at heavy staff cuts. Union talks with Transport Minister Tom Roper are continuing over areas such as staff levels, wage increases, a second-tier pay claim and superannuation. Union members will meet this afternoon to hear a report on the talks and decide their response to the government's so-called peace package. And people forced to drive to work today because of the strike are being given limited free parking by the Melbourne City Council. Parking restrictions have been eased in Yarra Park, Princess Park and along St Kilda Road. Normal restrictions will apply in the city. And here's Celia Horgan with the latest on the Gulf crisis.
The Muslim world's annual pilgrimage season reaches a climax today, marred by a confrontation in Mecca as Saudi Arabian police try to contain Iranian demonstrators. The clashes have also thrown a heavy shadow over a ceasefire order by the United Nations Security Council in the 7-year-old war between Iran and Iraq. Saudi Arabia says 400 people, including 275 Iranian pilgrims, died in Mecca on Friday. Iran says some of them were shot, but Saudi Arabia says they died in a stampede after clashes between demonstrators and police. Lebanon's pro-Iranian Islamic Jihad group has threatened reprisals against Saudi Arabia's ruling family. A senior Iranian official has vowed to attack American forces in the Gulf and unseat the Saudi royal family to avenge the deaths of the Iranian pilgrims. Tehran has blamed Saudi Arabian police for Friday's violence, saying it was an American plot. But Saudi authorities say Iranian demonstrators are responsible for the disturbances.
The state government is set to increase police powers in Victoria through the abolition of the so-called 6-hour rule, the extension of telephone tapping powers to the Victorian Police, and the likely introduction of fingerprinting powers. The Attorney-General, Mr Kennan, said yesterday that legislation affecting the 6-hour rule and the rights of persons in custody would be introduced in the coming session of State Parliament. He also indicated that Victoria would support the extension of telephone tapping powers to the state's police force as part of a national scheme under the terms of federal legislation passed earlier this year, and the extension of fingerprinting powers to police could